Speaker of the day. Many of you know him as Tom Clark, the avid snowboarder, vegetarian, once had a t-shirt business, and going to skydive this coming year in 2012 person, but he's also responsible for managing the company's renewable energy credit portfolio and filing testimony with the Michigan Public Service Commission related to the company's compliance with Public Act 295, Michigan's Clean, Renewable, and Efficient Energy Act, which impacts all of us, and I'm a big fan of. Tom uses this speech around the company to inform everyone of Public Act 295. So your evaluations and suggestions will help not only Tom, but the rest of the company learn about Public Act 295. We will need the time set at 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 30 seconds, and 7 minutes. And at this time, I would like to invite Tom up here for an avalanche of information about PA 295. Help me out, Tom.
Avalanche, indeed. Yeah, let's see if it's too dark in here. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. It is indeed an avalanche of information. PA 295, as with most laws passed in the state, is a large piece of legislation that took months and months and months to negotiate and ultimately get the legislature to pass. On October 6th of 2008, then Governor Jennifer Granholm signed PA 295, Michigan's Clean, Renewable, and Efficient Energy Act, into law. So, what was the purpose of this law, this act that the legislature spent all this time on? Well, the primary objective was to increase the amount of clean energy delivered to customers within the state of Michigan. But in order to do that, the state was also interested in facilitating the growth of the green industries within Michigan. So, as a side benefit to the clean and renewable energy, we also got jobs. Now, in order to ensure that these jobs are in Michigan, the law has some requirements that a substantial amount of investment occur actually within the state. So, we'll get into this in a little bit, but primarily, the law worked to do these objectives, these three objectives, in several different ways. The first thing it did is it created the Renewable Energy Credit, the Michigan Renewable Energy Credit. This credit represents 1 megawatt hour of renewable energy. It then went on to require that each and every electric service provider in the state of Michigan provide at least 10% of their retail sales from renewable energy, utilizing these renewable energy credits as evidence. Now, in order to ensure that the investment occurred in Michigan, the law required that the renewable energy was generated within the state of Michigan. So we all know that out west and out in the Midwest area, the Plain States, there's lots of wind, there's lots of sun. We can't use any of that energy to meet our requirements under PA 295. The second thing they did to ensure investment in Michigan is that they required the two largest utilities, Consumers Energy and Detroit Edison, to install a set amount of new renewable capacity within the state. Finally, in order to pay for all of this additional expense above and beyond the cost of energy from your traditional coal and natural gas-fired plants, all of the electric service providers were given the authority to charge every customer a monthly by-meter surcharge on their bill. So what is the impact of this particular act on consumers' energy? Well, a lot of people don't realize that Consumers Energy was already the state's largest renewable energy provider. In 2009, the state either purchased or generated 1.55 gigawatt hours of renewable energy. That's 1,550,000 megawatt hours of energy. But the law requires us to go further. By 2015, Consumers Energy will be required to supply at least 3.5 million megawatt hours or gigawatt hours of renewable energy annually. Also, as I mentioned, we're required to install a set amount of new renewable capacity. In the case of Consumers Energy, that's 500 megawatt hours. Now, there's a lot of intricacies in the law and a lot of different requirements. For example, a certain amount of renewable energy credits have to come from third-party owned generators. But kind of the two key elements of PA 295 and the impact they have on consumers is that the compliance obligation is phased in. So we don't have any obligation today. But beginning next year, we'll have to meet an increment of that 10%. And then in 2013 more, in 2014 more, until it ramps up to the full 10% by 2015. The second key piece is that RECs, renewable energy credits, have a 3-year life. So that means all of that renewable energy we generated in 2009, we get to hold on to the RECs that were generated from that renewable energy and utilize it as our compliance obligations show up later on. So what does Consumers Energy's renewable energy credit portfolio look like? And how are we going to utilize it to meet the requirements of the law? Well, what you're looking at is a fairly detailed chart. There's a couple of things going on I want to point out. The bar chart is showing you the annual numbers. So in light green, we've got the number of renewable energy credits we expect to see generated from our 2009 megawatt hours. So that's that 1.55 gigawatt hours. We also have a bar for our compliance obligation, which doesn't exist in 2009. But you'll see here in 2012 that we do have a compliance obligation. And it ramps up through 2015. Finally, we've got the orange bars. The orange bars represent the actual number of renewable energy credits that the company has received. A vast majority of these renewable energy credits are generated by facilities we don't actually own. And so the way the law works, we have to go out and convince the owners of those generators to take some steps to register their generator in a tracking system and provide us those renewable energy credits. We've done a pretty good job with 2009. We've still got some distance to go there, but we're well on our way. As you can see in the line charts, they're showing the bank of renewable energy credits we're going to build. So what's happening with the green line is that we're going to build up an inventory for the first 3 years, up to almost 6 million RECs. And then we're going to utilize that inventory in later years so that we don't actually have to generate in each year the full number of RECs that we have as a compliance obligation. Let's talk a bit about that capacity requirement, the other big component, the other big compliance piece of the law. We've all heard about the new renewable energy contracts that the company's been entering into and the new renewable energy projects the company's been constructing. We've entered into contracts for 300 additional megawatts of renewable capacity. Of that, we expect to get about 5 megawatts from our solar pilot program, the Experimental Advanced Renewable Program. We expect to get about 1 megawatt from hydro, 18 megawatts from landfill gas facilities, and 4 megawatts from anaerobic digesters. But the vast majority of that 300 megawatts is wind. 272 megawatts of new wind capacity. That's contracted. On top of that, the company is going to construct 250 megawatts of wind capacity. So, in summary, PA 295 is going to require us to supply at least 10% of our retail sales from renewable energy. It's also going to require that we add at least 500 megawatts of new renewable capacity. But Consumers has a plan in place. We have some existing generators, which are going to create a significant chunk of our requirement obligations, almost half. We've entered into some new long-term renewable energy purchase contracts, which are going to produce upwards of 900,000 RECs a year. And finally, the company is going to construct several new facilities, 2 of which will be online by the end of 2015, that will produce another 800,000 renewable energy credits. Mr. Toastmaster.
Timer, please put 1 minute on the clock for everyone to finish up with their evaluations. Tom, that was very, very interesting. My curious thought is what comes next?
What do you mean?
Well, we have a 2015 regulation.
Yeah.
Is there any foresight to say what happens after? Or is it just we ramp and then we're good? Or is there going to be even more?
The way the law is written now, we will maintain that 2015 obligation for eternity. Until the law is either repealed or until they pass a new law, maybe expend it. So a lot of the environmental people expect that they're going to pass legislation to increase that from 10% to maybe up to 15 by 2020 and so on and continue. But it's possible that they'll just sit there at 10%. And eventually, if renewable energy the cost to install those generators continues on the trajectory it's on, we'll be in a position where we're regularly saying, are we going to build a wind plant or a natural gas plant or a coal plant or a solar generator? And it's going to be dependent on what the company needs.
It's fascinating.
It's pretty neat stuff.